Hello and welcome to another quiz video tutorial. This video tutorial will cover the 6.1 homework quiz, all about converting numbers in percent form, decimal form, or fraction form to each other. So we'll just go ahead and begin the test and talk about some things. So you're going to be given different numbers in different formats, and you're going to be asked to convert those numbers to other formats. It's important to understand that numbers can be written in different ways. Every integer can be written as a fraction, every fraction can be written as a decimal, and every decimal can be written as a percent, and all of those can be vice versa as well. So when you're given a decimal, and I'll make one of my own up, like a decimal, like 0.0, I don't know, 8, I'll say, or 5, I'll say 5. Okay. This can be read as, let's see, that's 0 and 0, 5 tenths, hundredths. So this would be read as 5 hundredths. Hundredths. N-D-R-E-T-H-S. 5 hundredths, because this is going out to the hundredths decimal place. So if you know decimal place notation, then converting any decimal to a fraction is going to be no problem. Only this is asking us to do this as a percent. Well, that's easy too. Percent literally means for every 100. That's a direct translation. Like cent comes from the Latin root base word of 100, centennial, century, cent, there's 100 cents in a dollar. So think of percent literally meaning for every 100, which means that you could just take a number and put it over 100, and that's a percent. Well, it's not quite that easy, but let's talk a little bit more about this. So if I were to write this as a fraction, 5 hundredths, I could write this as 5 over 100. This one just happens to be super easy because for every 100 can be written as 5%. Now, another way that people look at this would be if you have the decimal, hundredths takes up 2 decimal place values. So if you have a number that's in decimal form, okay, going back over to this guy right here, and you wanted to convert this to a decimal, to a percent, you could take this decimal right here and move it 2 place values to the right, because that's what any number out of 100 is going to do, is move it 2 place values to the right. You rewrite that decimal, or at this point you can just leave it off, and then that time you put the percent. You can do that as well. That's a trick. It's not magic. It's based on mathematics, and the mathematics is what we just looked at here. Now, one more relationship I want you to understand is well, I guess we'll get to that in just a moment. But for now, hopefully that part was helpful for you. Okay, so now going back to a decimal,
Mr. Jackie, please call 107.
Okay, sorry about that. So if you got 115%, that literally means that this number right here, this number, can be written as 115 over percent for every 100. That's what percentages mean. So that's this percent is this fraction. Of course, this isn't reduced, this is improper, but who cares? Now the point is, I'm going to give you a different number here, like 112, or no, I'll do 126%. So if I'm given a percent, I want that as a decimal. There's several ways you can look at this. The first way is just understanding I can write this as a percent, but in fraction form, per 100. Well, now I can just use long division and divide and find out how many times exactly 100 goes into 126. But using base 10 systems, it's really easy to divide by 100. Watch what happens. Like 126 divided by 100 is the same as 1.26. Done. That's literally what's happening when you divide by 100. what's going on is, it can go into it one whole time and then 26 100ths of a time later. You can see that because if I were to convert this to a mixed number, this would be 1 and 26 100ths. Well, you already know what 26 100ths looks like as a decimal. If you say this decimal out loud, it is 26 100ths. So there's a lot of detail that goes into these number relationships, but once you understand those relationships, converting one number to a different type of number is going to be as easy as reciting the ABCs, which really it needs to be. If you're at this age, you need to be able to convert decimals to percents to fractions and back and forth, and you need to understand that they are the same numbers. So let's talk about the other way that I was talking about before. A lot of people, I guess a lot of teachers just teach it this way as if it's some mathematical rule, and I hesitate to say that. I'm usually okay with you understanding that that's a quick and dirty way to do it, but I want you to understand why the mathematics works, which is what I showed you over here. Now that you know that, a lot of teachers just kind of teach, okay, you've got two percentage dots, and those dots just go over twice. It's just kind of a silly way to remember. You just always go away from the percent. A percent can be rewritten as a decimal of 1.26. Done. So that decimal is the same thing as that percent. 1 whole and 26 100ths. Same as 100% whole. That's 100%. And also 26%. 126%. So that's kind of what's happening here. Hopefully you're catching those. Okay. I'll read this one out loud and then we'll talk about it. On a history test, you get 86 out of 100 points possible. This asks to write a decimal and a percent. Write a decimal and a percent that represents a score of 86 out of 100. So this is a very common, one of the most common mathematical applications you'll ever come across in the academic setting. You get a score out of a score possible, and you want to know what that percent is. Every student always asks me, Mr. Stewart, what's the percent? What percent did I get? I'll give him a fraction, like let's say, oh, you got 76 out of 100, and they want to say, oh, Mr. Stewart, what is that as a percent? And I think at this age, you just need to be able to calculate it yourself, mostly because I'm too lazy and don't have time to put the fraction and the percent on there. I'll just usually put the letter grade because that's more informative. But you can do this simply by long dividing. If you've got this as a fraction, basically this is asking what's the decimal form and also what's the percent form, right? The percent and what's the decimal form. So, any fraction can be converted to a decimal by long division. What's nice about this one, however, is we're dividing by 100. So really, that can just be rewritten as, let's see, if I were to, 100 goes into 76.76 times. It's just going to happen that way. And you could always check this if you wanted to. You could actually long divide, or you could type in your calculator 76 divided by 100. But there's no need. That's 0, 0, decimal, 0, yep. It goes there. Let's see how many times 100 goes into 760, for example. And we would say, well, 7 times, subtract, that's 60. 600, oh, and there you go. 100 goes into 600 6 times, and you're done. So that's kind of what's going on there. But since we're working out of 100, it's really easy. So that trick, that just moving that number twice over, only works when you're dividing by 100, which is also why it's really nice that we're working with percentages, because percent literally means for every 100. So this is the percent. 76 per 100 is the percent. We just have to write it like this. Now, I don't know how to make it more clear than that. Hopefully you're catching these. This shouldn't be that tricky of a quiz. This is meant to be more of a review style quiz. Make sure when you put your numbers in that you include the decimal here. So if I'm writing this, I need to put that decimal and that number here, whatever it happens to be, right? And the percent, I'm going to say, since the percent sign symbol is already there, it doesn't look like you'll need to. If I just typed the percent here, that'll be fine. But there you go. Okay, last question. Only 15/100ths of the total number of vehicles in your school parking lot are buses. What percent of the vehicles are not buses? So the only tricky part to this question is this right here, which we bolded and made caps. So tricky, but not trying to trick you from it, trying to draw attention to it. So this is asking what percent of the vehicles in the parking lot are not buses. If we know that that number of cars are buses, then the opposite. I'm sorry, not the opposite, but the rest, the remainder, the leftovers are going to be non-buses. And so, how do you think about this? Well, think about every decimal is just going to be one part out of a whole, right? So 0.15 is out of 1. Or 15%, we could say 15% is out of 100%, really. I mean, it is 15 out of 100, right? 15 out of 100. Either way, what you're trying to get to is one whole. Or let's see, 20, so it'd be 80, so 75 out of 100. All of these numbers, okay, all of these numbers are going to be representing some portion out of a whole. Whoops, I'm sorry. I should have written like this. Should have written like 100 out of 100. All of these are going to be a whole. This is your whole decimal, or in other words, just 1. This is your whole percent, 100%, or this is your whole fraction, 100 out of 100. And so that's what we're asking for here, is basically convert this number, not this number, convert the leftover of this number to a percent, and then write it in the space provided. This time it looks like we'll need to include the percent symbol. And that should be it. If you have any questions, please bring these to your teachers. I hope this is helpful. Have a good day.